So now we do have a fully working example here. Well, not fully completely working. We do not have any handling of clients, so um, it, for example, it doesn't handle any connections really. You just greet him and then they just go away, and we wait for messages. But that's basically it. There is no broadcasting to other clients or something like that. And even more important, this code isn't cool. So this code is more or less hard to read. It's not very extensible due to the fact that it is pretty hard to read and it's hard to maintain. And personally, I would never ever agree to implement any client handling into this because it's just a mess. And I want to change that. So what we are going to create, we are going to create a node module. Now, all I do is I go here and create a new server, and let's name it Chatty Server so that you don't get too confused with the application name and the module name. And then you just go in here and create a new index.js, and that's basically it. That you just created a node module. Now what I like about the node module architecture is that I just could go down here and create another folder inside of my node module and call it node modules, and then I could, or I will, let's see, node modules, chatty server. So now I'm in this folder here, and then I could, with the node packet manager, just install new node modules, and they would all go into this folder. So I just underscore. Underscore is what jQuery is for the HTML DOM. Underscore is for collections and arrays in JavaScript. So just keep that in mind. And now when I'm inside of my module, I can just go here, say underscore is require underscore, and that's basically it. And this is cool because I could ship my chatty server with all its modules, but what the user of the code, what someone who includes it in his application sees, is just chatty is require chatty server. And that's all. He doesn't see actually the underscore or any other node modules I include. So now let's create the node module. One thing you need to know for this is that in Node there is no global namespace. So in JavaScript, when you write it in the browser, you have the window object, which is the global namespace. And when I'm, for example, I'm in a function, let's say function A, and I'm in this function, and I say my var, say 1. This function, this variable, my var, would be available in A, but it will be appended actually to the global namespace, which is window. And you do not have this in Node, which is an advantage, because you do not have to write any wrappers or something in JavaScript. If you do not want to spoil the global namespace, you write it inside a function which calls itself immediately after its creation. And you do not have to do this. You can write your code here in this node module, and then you have to explicitly say what you're exporting. So what exactly you will get when you require the module. Export is a good keyword here, because the thing is actually that, so module, this is your global namespace in terms of global as far as it gets in Node. And there's this variable which is called exports, and whatever you assign to exports, and you really can assign everything to exports, it will be what the user of your code gets when he requires the module. So when I just write here module exports 1, chatty is over here would be just 1. nothing more. So let's create the module itself, and for this I just go here and create a new object first and then export this object. So exports is chatty. Alright. And what I want is I want an object. Okay, I have the object here now, and I want a function that creates me a new chatty server out of a configuration. And for this case, we should what we should do first is let me just comment all this out. Well, let me just comment this stuff out and delete the event emitter example, and then I just come over here and say args is process arguments vector or argv and slice, and process is a variable available which stands for the current process, and arguments vector or argv is all the arguments you passed over with the command line. Slice is a function which can slice arrays apart. I could append here another parameter, and this would tell slice up the arguments vector array, begin at index 2 and take one element. But I do not want this. I just want to skip two variables, because let me just quickly show you this. Process. Goddamn. Process arguments vector. So let me just act like all of this would work already. Localhost and TCP port and the HTTP port, and okay, this away also. But you see here the arguments vector array also holds node as the first argument and the full path to the file as the second argument. So we start at the third argument, which is index 2, because as you hopefully know, arrays start with the index 0. So we start at index 2, which is the third element, and then we can just args. Alright. So what I want is a function in this object which creates a server out of a configuration. And let me just create this configuration over here so that you don't get confused by that. So I just say server is chatty create server, and let's say that you have to give it a HTTP server, which will be HTTP, of course, and a TCP host, which is let me see, which is args 0, because slice created a new array out of it, and the TCP port will be args 1, I guess. I hope. Yes. And the host So this is some kind of a problem, because I/O itself does not have a socket; it just listens on a HTTP. So we cannot create a server fully inside of this here. We actually need to attach to an existing server. So you give the module the existing server. So this would be args 2, guess. Alright, so yes, 0, 1, 2. Alright. So now that we have this configuration, we can use it here. And what I want is a new object that comes out of this create server, which gives me the possibility to attach to certain events. And I could just return an object here and then create an event emitter as you've seen before, but I do not want this because this would give someone outside here the possibility to also emit events. I don't want that. I want to hide the emitter, so I have to create the emitter here. Well, first I have to include the event emitter, of course. Emitter is require events event emitter. Alright, and then I can create the emitter here. New event emitter. And then I can say on event callback emitter on event do this, and this gives the user of our module the possibility to attach to certain events but not to emit them itself, because he just does not have any access to the emitter. The next part, and then we're actually already done with the create server part, is to start up the server. Now keep in mind that maybe someone comes and does not want the HTTP stuff and the WebSocket stuff. Maybe someone wants to just set up a TCP chat. Now he's probably at the wrong address with Chatty, because well, the feature of this thing is or will be that you can seamlessly chat with WebSockets and TCP, but let's give them the possibilities. So with that in mind, we have to actually check if someone handed us over a HTTP server and TCP host and TCP port. So let's check on this. So HTTP server, yes. When this is not 0 or null or undefined, create new var IO, require socket IO, and then listen on the config server, and then sockets on. This line isn't done, something is missing here, but let me just go on. I will explain this in a minute. So next thing is config TCP host, and of course we need the port 2, config TCP port, and the server is net server uppercase, do not forget. Server on connection. It's not done yet, don't forget. Server listen config TCP port, config TCP host. Alright, now as I said, these two lines here are not done, because what I want here is something that unifies those two events and emits it to the event emitter. Now what I could of course do is just write a function in here and then receive the socket and then just emit it to the event, but we want to write cool code, and because these two callback functions wouldn't differ, we only write one. So we go up here and say var on socket connection is function and socket. And then we just emit. So we say you can actually use spaces for the names of your events. Client connected. And then we just take the name of this and put it down here. And that's it. And now we have a unified server which is running on its ports and listening on the HTTP, and all we need to do now is wait for incoming connections over here. So I say on. Of course I need to use the same name, client connected, speaking of that, function. And now whenever someone connects with WebSockets or TCP, this event is emitted and I get its socket. Let's quickly test if our stuff is working so far. So I've attach the event over here. Console log client connected. I need to start the server first, of course. So server start. Alright, and then I need a little client which connect. Actually, I could just comment this out, and I can delete all this or comment it out again. Just need a client to connect, and yeah. So let's test this. I go here in my console. I also need my browser. All right. Let's do this. So node up. Oh, actually. Okay. Of course, an error. This will never work. Need to fix this once again. And net is not defined. Of course. Of course it isn't. So. Alright. Socket I always started. And this was the TCP client. And now cannot get. That's bad. Yeah, of course. Because I've commented out too much. Once again, really messy, but we just want to test quickly. So, right, TCP client is here, and WebSocket client. There's my girl. Alright, this works.